Red light, green light is one of the most physically and mentally demanding games that we see played in the entire Squid Game series, especially when we consider the type of people that they recruited to play these games. Now, my analysis today is not just going to be based on my own opinion, but it's going to be using developmental psychology to really break this down. So my only question left for you is, are you ready to play? Red light, green light is a game played globally, so chances are that you played it as a kid. At least I did. This is one of the best games for children in terms of all the areas that it helps with development. Listen to this list of just 10 things that this game helps in developing. The first is listening skills and following directions. Obviously, you have to listen for when the person says red light or green light in the game. But there's some versions that I at least played when I was a kid where the child who was yelling out red light, green light, they might say red light, and then they might say red light again to purposely see if somebody's gonna move, to kind of trip them up. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily regulation. Let me know if you played a similar version when you were a kid as well too. It might just be that my school was full of cheaters. The next thing that this game tests in children is what's known as receptive language. This is our ability to understand and process written and spoken language, so how we're taking it in, hence why it's called receptive. This also includes things like nonverbal body language. In real red light, green light, the leader making the commands, you can kind of look and start to notice cues, things like maybe seeing their mouth about to move, or seeing their body about to spin around and then say red light to tell when they are actually going to make a command. So not only as a kid are you listening for their commands, but now you're learning how to read body language. And not just that, but now you're changing your own behavior in response to the behavior that you're seeing from another person. Pretty advanced skill. The third thing it helps in developing is motor skills. So running and stopping over and over and over again really helps in strengthening your larger muscle groups, but it also helps with fine motor skills, things like balance or coordination or endurance. The fourth thing that's tested in children for red light, green light is reaction time or their agility. Think about it. Often, the child who's able to react the fastest when they hear green light is usually the one who ends up winning. At least they put themselves in a better position to win. Think about track and field. The person who's able to get off the block the fastest often has much better odds. The start is everything. So this game really helps in honing your ability to hear some kind of demand for movement and then react based off of that. Okay, halfway through now, the fifth thing that real life red light, green light tests in children or develops in children is body awareness. So once a child does stop, they have to, of course, hold that position. They can't move, otherwise they're out. And so it helps the child be more aware of where their body actually is in space, down to the smallest part, like fingers. That way they can actually hold these body parts still. The sixth thing this game tests in children is leadership. This game really brings out what type of leader you could be. So like I mentioned, at my school, kids didn't really play to regulation, so maybe saying red light twice to try to trip people up. So with your power then as a leader, using it to make it harder for other people to actually win. And then the child would see the results of that. They would get feedback. And so maybe all the other kids were super pissed that you kept doing this and they didn't talk to you for the rest of recess or even the rest of the day. And so then that person, that leader, they then learn, okay, so with my power, I can choose to be an a-hole if I want, but it's going to result in some other negative consequences that I might not want. So it has them kind of learn and assess, well, is that what I want to do? Is that the kind of leader that I want to be? Then we have other leaders who were so strict to following the rules. They would not deviate to save their life. Then maybe we had some other kids who were kind of devious and would pretend that they didn't see their friend or their crush move on red light, even though they did. So when you're in that position of leader in this game, it really teaches you, how do I want to lead a group of people? And is that effective? The seventh thing this game tests in children is focus and attention. There are a lot of people around you in this game, so it's very easy to get distracted and try to focus on what the people around you are doing. But if you do that, it can cost you the win. And so this game teaches children to focus on the leader and kind of drown out all other distractions that might be in the way. The eighth thing that this game teaches children is patience. So Newton's first law, right? An object that is at rest stays at rest. An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an equal opposing force, whatever. I got a C in physics in high school and did not take it past then. So I'm a psychologist, not a physicist. So I don't know. There's probably part of that I got wrong. But think about this. When our body is in motion, it is resisting stopping that motion. So when a child actually stops on red light, everything in their body is going to be telling them to go. It's going to be hard, first of all, for them to stop, period. And then when they do stop, it's going to be hard to sit there and wait until they hear the command to move again. Think about this when you're driving. When you're driving and say maybe all of a sudden somebody brakes in front of you, so now you have to hit the brakes. Your body kind of jerks forward, right? It's because your body was initially in motion and it's resisting that stopping of the motion there. And then if you have been stopped for a long time, think about it. You start to get a little bit antsy. You're like, come on, I just want to go already. Your body's ready to be back in motion. And so this teaches a lot of patience with kids, because just like when we're driving, we have no control over when that light changes, just like we have no control over when the kid actually says green light. The ninth thing this game develops is perseverance. So if you don't win the first round, or if you keep getting out, being willing to actually play the next round and try again. And the final thing that this game really helps with is actually learning traffic signals and pedestrian safety. I mean, quite literally, it's the game red light, green light. So it's helping to teach you things like, okay, I should stop on red and go on green, which is incredibly helpful for when you're driving or trying to cross a sidewalk, for instance. And I'm convinced that whoever you are out there that looks around to see if there's any cars going at a red light and then you just pass the light, that you probably cheated in red light, green light as a kid, and you also probably got annoyed when somebody called you out on it. So it makes a lot of sense from a developmental perspective why this game has stuck around as long as it has, and why it probably will continue to do so for kids in the future. If children actually do still play on playgrounds anymore, I genuinely do not know the answer to that. Now, let's get to how the frontman and the creators of the Squid Game version of red light, green light use this developmental psychology so well against the players to consistently eliminate people from both seasons when this game is played. Now, in the Squid Game version, this is testing 4 main areas when it comes to these adults. The first and probably biggest area that this game tests is inhibition and impulse control. This is where most of the players are set up to fail. In season 2, especially, we learn just how much debt the people get into and how they really got into these games, betting a lot of money. And in season 1, we see that Ji-yoon is addicted to betting on these horse races, and he loses a good bit of money doing that. If any of the players are remotely like Ji-yoon was, and they likely are, then they are in Squid Game because of their lack of impulse control. We see that as the games go on in season 1, the players change drastically from when they first started. They get more strategic, more patient, more callous. They change almost completely from when they started. But red light, green light is the first game. And with the first game, the players are exactly the same in terms of the characteristics that they had before the games and going into it. So if they lacked impulse control before, they're gonna lack impulse control when they're playing this game. So yes, the shock value and seeing that people actually die when they move causes people to freak out and get eliminated when the game starts. But people keep getting eliminated throughout red light, green light because the game is playing on their weaknesses. Oh, and one of the most unrealistic parts of this game is Thanos surviving it in season 2. It's unclear exactly what drug he's on, but all drugs impact the prefrontal cortex of our brain. And one of the things that this part of our brain is responsible for is impulse control and inhibition. That's why when you get drunk or when you get high, you do and say things that you might regret doing that you would never do or say if you were sober. It's because in that moment, your brain physically cannot stop you from doing or saying things that it would be able to stop you from otherwise. The prefrontal cortex is also in charge of helping us to follow complex commands, like consistently stopping on go and going on green. And this gets even more complex in season 2, I'm gonna talk about in a moment. But it's more complex here because of all the different distractions that are going on. So consistently actually listening and doing what the doll is saying is much harder in season 1 to actually do, in Squid Game version of this game in general. So it's unlikely that Thanos would have consistently been successful at doing this throughout the games on the drugs that he was on. And certain types of drugs impact the part of our brain that controls coordination and balance. Have you ever seen somebody who was maybe really drunk or high and it looks like they're actively fighting against their body to just keep their balance? When Thanos pushes those people over in season 2, it's incredibly unlikely that he would have kept his balance himself. And as we learned in season 1, that's repeated in season 2, anything other than walking in this version of the game basically puts you at risk. Because when the doll calls out red light, if you're running, it's a lot easier to lose your balance and a lot harder to stop in general. That's why so many kids get out of this game so quickly when we play. It's because all of us sprinted for dear life whenever we would hear green light, and then were unable to stop or lost our balance then when the person actually called out red light. So Thanos skipping for joy and still being able to stop on red? Yeah. Not happening. The second thing it tests in adults, just like it tests in children, is attention, or more accurately, distractibility. Remember how I said that it was hard in this game to focus because of all the distractions going on around you? Well, what could be more distracting than people getting shot around you? And honestly, although helpful, Ji-yoon yelling in season 2 is another distraction. Because now the players don't only have to listen for the doll to say red light, green light. Now they have to listen for Ji-hoon, and they have to try to process and understand what he's saying and follow his instructions while still trying to follow and understand the instructions of the game. So yes, Ji-hoon, you have done these games before, but how often did you do it with somebody yelling at you? Now, the third thing this game tests is something known as social learning. Much more than in a child's version of this game, the adults need to look around at one another and see what other people are doing that is or is not working and adjust their own gameplay accordingly. I know that this sounds contradictory to everything that I just said for attention, but it is vital for the other players to not just listen for the doll speaking, but to look around and see what the other players are doing. And we see that the players do this, and this changes how they play. The only person we don't really see do this is Ilnam, aka player number 1, in season 1, and that's because he's already watched so many versions of the game and people playing the game that he knows the best strategy from the jump to do. That could have been the first hint about something being off about him, because it is not natural to be in a group setting where you're playing this game that involves a lot of people and not even look around to see how other people are reacting. And you might wonder, well, what if you've played the games before, something so simple like red light, green light that we've all played? There's an element of all these games that makes them different though, and that is the fact that people die if they lose. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't really care to learn strategy in red light, green light, because if I got out next round, well, whatever. I'll just try again the next round and try to run faster than the next kid in that round. It was no big deal. Think about it. You probably didn't learn any strategy to this game playing as a child. Same with these players. So when it comes time to use strategy in Squid Game, they don't have any. It's just run for dear life and hope you get to the end. So going back to the idea of social learning, the tricky part is You can't get too distracted that you don't listen to the doll telling you to move, but you also can't be too focused on the doll that you don't look around and try to improve your strategy using other people in the game. And then there's a whole other element where you might just say screw it to strategy altogether. It's all too far behind and time is ticking down and you just run for dear life. So adding in the timer is truly such an evil addition to a lot of the games because it really causes you to doubt if the strategy you've been using is working or not and just abandon it and go off instinct, even though the strategy probably is working. The last thing that this game tests connects to the other two things that I just mentioned, and that is something termed cognitive flexibility. Now, I talked about this in a short that I did titled The Psychology of Squid Game in 3 minutes, and so I gave a really good example, if I do say so myself, in that short, so I'm just going to insert that here because probably you haven't seen it. The first concept is cognitive flexibility. This is the ability to adapt your thinking and behavior in responses to changes in your environment. This concept is shown beautifully in season 1 with the Dalgona game. When Jiun starts to sweat on the Dalgona, he realizes that his sweat is weakening the structure, and that's when he comes up with the idea to lick it to get the shape out. This is why I said before that it's vital to look around and see what other people are doing, because some people are more cognitively flexible than others. So while others could only think of doing the Dalgona one way, Jiun thought about doing it another. Same with that kind of annoying woman who decided to burn the Dalgona to get it out instead, right? Both of them showed a lot of cognitive flexibility. Getting back to red light, green light in real life. When the kid who was first saying that, the initial leader, switches when another child gets to the end, you now have to adapt to this new person's style. So this new kid, they may pause for longer after saying red light. They may be horrible at noticing when people are actually moving on red light, etc. So if you're only sticking to what was working for the different kid before, it's not going to help you in this round. And like I said earlier, as a kid, I always ran when they said green light. And come on, you ran too. And so to be running your whole life and then to switch to walking like we see them do in Squid Game, that takes a lot of cognitive flexibility because they've probably never actually played that way before. And when we think about it just logically, it makes more sense to run than walk when you have a timer that's ticking down because running is faster than walking. So you would think that using that strategy would actually get you to the end quicker and more effectively. But we see that that logic doesn't work here.